House, thank you. Let's discuss this now with CNN political commentator and political anchor at Spectrum News, Errol Lewis, and CNN political analyst and Princeton University professor and historian, Julian Zelizer. Good morning to you. And Errol, let me start with this, just the basic contradiction within the administration. Friday night, a senior administration official told CNN that the president did not accept Putin's denial. And then you had 3 times on Air Force One, 3 administration officials declined to say that the president indeed accepted Putin's denial. What is the assessment here?
Well, my sense of it is that some of this is the growing pains of a new administration. We'll keep in mind that neither of the 2 cabinet secretaries nor the president himself has ever worked in the field of international diplomacy. So they're kind of doing this for the first time. I think they're going to learn some of the small things that they should pick up on, things like it's important to have a press briefing right after the fact in order to make sure that you don't have this kind of confusion. The fact that you should do it on camera, as the Russians did, not this strange, sort of predilection for audio and not letting any pictures be taken of them as they answer questions. And then finally getting their stories straight. So, look, my sense of it is that there's absolutely no reason to believe that the president changed from his last statement in Poland the day before this meeting took place. And the fact that none of the cabinet secretaries will give us a definitive answer on it tells you all that you need to know. The Russian version of this seems to be closer to the truth than the sort of haze of ambiguity that's coming from the administration.
So, Julian, to be fair, the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, the advisor to the president, Gary Cohn, they were not in the meeting. So they are only repeating potentially what they were told. The president or Secretary Tillerson, they've got to answer this. What's your take on why there has not been clarity on this?
Well, look, this is where the credibility of a president matters, both on a specific issues or on all issues. The president has sent mixed messages. When at a press conference the day before the meeting, he vacillated and hesitated to say that the Russians had intervened in the 2016 election. He set up the kind of speculation that now exists, since no one else was in the room other than these men. And so when you have those contradictions, when you have questions of credibility, and then the president doesn't follow up by directly addressing the issue, it shouldn't be a surprise that many people are skeptical about which side of the account is actually true.
So, Errol, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, will be on State of the Union later this morning, and she was asked about this exchange and the president's conversations with President Putin about election meddling. Here's what she said.
Everybody knows that Russia meddled in our elections. Everybody knows that they're not just meddling in the United States elections. They're doing this across multiple continents, and they're doing this in a way that they're trying to cause chaos within the countries.
So, Errol, Ambassador Haley has often spoken clearly and concisely when the president has not. You'll remember the White House refused to say whether the president actually believes climate change is real. She came out and says he does. Is her role just to affirm what seems obvious so the administration can move on, or do you see another strategy here, or is there one?
I don't know if it's a strategy so much, Victor, as this is somebody who clearly is a skilled political veteran, somebody who has run for election, who has stood before people multiple times, who understands that you have to be very direct, that if you leave ambiguity, in addition to what Julian mentioned, which is absolutely correct, you had a false statement, in effect, from the president in the form of this tweet saying everyone here at the G20 is talking about, John Podesta and the DNC not taking seriously threats.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what the president of Argentina was talking about.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy to sort of think that out of that sort of blanket of ambiguous statements you're going to get a clear policy. Nikki Haley does understand that you have to be clear and you have to be direct. She may get a call from the White House, but they should probably be listening to her more than the other way around.
Julian, the narrative we heard from Secretary Tillerson was that the president pressed Vladimir Putin on election meddling. If he accepted the denial, how firm could that press have been?
Well, if he did accept the denial, or he didn't follow through on what happens next, and will there be continued sanctions for the Russian intervention, then he didn't really press them. He just talked about it, and he almost did his duty to try to get some of the pressure off. That's not really pressure. there has been much effort to actually create pressure on the Russians, not simply for what happened, but to make sure there isn't more intervention in 2018 and 2020. And the pressure is not simply saying something to the Russian leadership, but imposing sanctions or taking other measures. Look, when President Trump wants to be clear in his attacks on the media, in his attacks on Democrats, he can be very clear. So I think many people are wondering why he doesn't have that clarity here. It might not just be an experience. It might be his just unwillingness to do so.
This actually is one of the few topics that could be cleared up in 140 characters. You could simply say, I did not accept the denial from President Putin. You could do that in probably 80 characters. Julian Zelizer, Errol Lewis, stick with us. We'll talk about health care a little later in the show.
Thank you.